interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump.
Last night's final debate now in the books. Question: did either candidate walk away the clear winner?
And for that, we are turning now to our political science professor over at North Central College. That's in Naperville. I want to say good morning to Professor Caliendo this morning. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Good morning to both of you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess it depends on who you're talking to as to who won. I was just reading on Twitter right here. I was surprised to see this. Megyn Kelly, podcaster, who is no fan of the president, says that Donald Trump won handily, that Biden wasn't a force at all. There are a lot of people who would disagree with that. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you know me. I mean, I try to get away from the winners, losers kind of thing. It's not really about that. I would say that I would imagine that both of their camps were much happier last night than they were after the first debate, where it was very, very different. I think they came in with goals that they wanted to achieve. I think both of them would feel like they achieved those goals. But ultimately, what matters is whether voters are motivated to get to the polls and cast their ballots for each candidate. And so we have a little while until we'll know that.
I want to ask you about strategy. At one point, I really thought that President Trump had Biden on his heels when he brought up the 94 crime bill. He actually got Biden to admit, I made a mistake. But then I also thought the president made a mistake with regard to Hunter Biden. In a world of COVID and with the economy in a shambles, do Americans really care about what Hunter Biden did?
I don't know that they do. I mean, I think there's a section of the public who's very interested in that, but those are the people who are supporting the president anyway. A lot of what we heard last night from the president in terms of his attacks needed to be decoded if you weren't paying attention to a certain media segment, right? If you weren't reading those websites and watching those news channels, you wouldn't even understand half of what he said because it wasn't mainstream media focused. And I think that those folks would complain that that's a bias in the mainstream media. But it was clear that he wanted to paint Joe Biden as a typical politician, a corrupt politician, and that narrative was something that the president came in really geared toward perpetrating. And I think he did that to some extent, but I just don't know what the effect will be because everybody knows Joe Biden at this point. He's been in the public eye for almost a half a century. And so I think if you didn't think he was corrupt going into last night, whatever you heard last night wasn't going to change that.
Well, 11 days to go before the election. And, Joe Biden has this healthy lead in just about every poll under the sun. And the reality is this election is going to be decided by the Electoral College. I want to ask you right now, how important are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and North Carolina right now in deciding who wins this race?
It's always the case because of the structure of the way we select presidents that there's a certain number of key states that are important. And of course, it's hard not to think about the 2016 map and which states broke for President Trump or then candidate Trump. And how that Vice President Biden is leading in many of those states. But remember, in 2016, the polls were wrong in a number of those states, didn't get it right. Those states were close. I'm talking about, the Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. And so voter turnout is going to matter. We know that it's going to be higher than it was in 2016, maybe the highest we've seen in modern times. For a variety of reasons. But there's also other paths. The path for the president is narrow. The path for Joe Biden is larger because there are states now in play like Arizona and like Florida, which is a typical state that's in play. And if those break differently, there's a lot of combinations of electoral votes that can lead Biden to the presidency. The president's path.
Real quick, I got to cut you off. We're almost out of time. Sure. So real quick to our viewers, we're probably not going to know who won on Election Day. Is that fair to say, given the massive volume of people who are voting by mail? What's your message to viewers with regard to closure, when we're going to know who's going to win?
Yeah, you're not going to go to bed on November 3rd and know who the winner is. I'll be with you very early in the morning on November 4th, and I'm probably going to be saying the same thing. We don't know for sure. I think some combination of knowing how many mail-in ballots are still outstanding, along with the ballots that have been counted, might give us some sense in some key states. And if it's a blowout in either direction, we might be able to have a good sense of it. But I expect there's going to be lawsuits, and I expect there's going to be counting that goes on well after Election Day.
Well, that's why I'm glad you're going to be with us the day after Election Day. We're going to have a lot to talk about and a lot of airtime to have to fill. So you're going to have to help us stretch. Stretch.
I can do that. I can take up space. Yes, I can.
Appreciate
All right.
that.
Thank you very much, Professor Caliendo. Appreciate it.
Good to see you both.